I think it is actually pretty difficult. I think it is pretty difficult if you're reading it through for the first time. So,
okay.
Wife, partner. Oh boy. I'm getting so many more questions. Like, I'm getting a lot of answers, but I'm also getting a lot of questions. What is his damn name? Things somehow get more confusing. Okay, I'm just gonna paste now. However, it's pretty. I should know at this point, but they all start with F. This is the Silmarillion blog that you stumbled upon. This is my first time reading the Silmarillion. For context, I read the entirety of The Lord of the Rings. Was it last year? It was one of the best reading experiences I've ever had. I have grown up with Lord of the Rings. Like, my dad is the biggest Lord of the Rings fan that I know. I think he reads it at least once a year, and sometimes when he's done, he just starts over. Like 10 or 12, I was finally allowed to watch the films with my parents, and I just like loved them, fell in love with them. The Silmarillion has been a book that, like, because I grew up with my dad who just continually read Tolkien as kind of sometimes the only books he would read in a year, this book has become like this mythical thing in my mind because it was always in our basement and I would always see it and just like wonder what the heck it is. Like, it sounded so mythical and mystical, like the Silmarillion. To finally be reading it feels like really weird because, like, as a kid, it's been a book that has just kind of been like this artifact in my home that I've been really interested in and intrigued by and intimidated by. Here now, I'm that much of the way through the Silmarillion, which is only about 50 pages, but I thought I should start this vlog, catch you guys up to speed. It really feels like reading the Bible, and I kind of just want to call it like the Bible for Tolkien's world, as like this like founding story and myth and legend, and of course it has like the gods of the world in it. Where did the elves come from? Where did the orcs come from? Where did everything happen? How did everything happen? How did we get to the point in, like, I guess The Hobbit or The Fellowship? Like, what came before? So many cool things that are being dropped, and like answers that I've wanted, or answers that I didn't even know that I wanted to questions I didn't know that I had. Also very interesting that he like remarks that always I had the sense of recording what was already there somewhere, not of inventing. It came to me in a dream. It's the music of the Ainur, who are the first beings, I suppose, more like the gods, but there is one god above the rest. To me, it reads a lot like a god and his angels, but that's not really exactly it, because the angels have a lot of power, and they're actually the ones who, like, eventually is described that they go to Arda, which is the planet. Anyway, the Ainur are the beings that Iluvatar creates, and we have a lot of them. They're a lot like, I guess, gods, and I guess they do kind of become the gods of Middle-earth. There is one of these Ainur, like angels, I'm really picturing them as angels, named Melkor, and it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar, for he sought therein to increase the power and glory of the part assigned to himself. So a lot of like the, I guess, religious or creative imagery and energy inspired by music and created by music. What ends up happening is that a number of the Ainur, like a number of the angels, I guess, the beings created by the god, they decide that they're gonna go and live in Arda, like on the planet, and not go back to, I forget what it's called. The Ainur that come into Arda are specifically called the Valar. There are 7 lords of the Valar and 7 queens of the Valar, so there's 14 of them. There's kind of a lot to keep track of here. It's my closest comparison, or the thing that like my brain is immediately trying to compare them to, is just like the Greek gods, because they all kind of have their own dominion or craft over which they are just kind of master. Melkor sneaks in to Arda, very much like Satan kind of sneaks into Eden in Paradise Lost. Melkor, though, is actually the brother of the strongest of the Valar, whose name is Manwë. Let me flip to the pronunciation guide. But we have like a lord of the waters, more like Hades, who is the keeper of the houses of the dead. We have Yavanna, who is like the giver of fruits, so she's kind of like a Demeter type of figure. The one who's the most, I'm like the kind of the most interested in, just because of his connections with other things, is Aula, whose lordship is over all the substances of which Arda is made, which means like, I guess he's kind of like a smith, a master of all crafts. He's interesting to me because I think there's a lot to explain. I also have the Maiar. You have the Maiar, who are like the servants and helpers of the Valars. And one of these servants of Aula is Sauron. Keep like all the names straight so far has been interesting. It's also been interesting because Tolkien, of course, is just like so interested in linguistics. It gives to a lot of things in here, a lot of people. Of course, the names, which they would be known by other people and in other languages. So a lot of times you have like 3 or 4 different names by which one person is known by. And so it gets a little bit confusing, or sometimes I accidentally combine or disassociate, I guess, one name from the others. I think they're actually talking about 2 people, but they're not. I have a short little section in the Valaquenta of the enemies, all about the enemies. Just like every time, honestly, that something is referenced from the trilogy or from the films, I'm just like, oh my god. Feeling like you're unearthing things and finding out where things came from. And when you have like scenes, for example, this one is about the Balrogs, and I love the Balrogs, and like picturing it in the film, because like when you're watching Lord of the Rings or reading the books, you get a sense that obviously like there's so much time that has passed before we have this story, and so they kind of live in a much more modern world. And so when they encounter some spirit or something a little bit more ancient in their world, it's just so cool, because you're like, what is this like spiritual being doing in this eon, in this time, in this context? And it's just really, really cool to finally get like the information on them. So we have a bunch of Maiar, like the servants of the Valar, who are drawn to Melkor and like his power, instructed afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valarakar, scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror. Among those of his servants that have names, the greatest was that spirit whom the Eldar called Sauron, or Gorthar, the Cruel. See, Gorthar doesn't really have the same like ring of terror that like Sauron does. The eye of Gorthar the Cruel, it doesn't really have the same pizzazz. When I read The Lord of the Rings, my thing was like, who is Sauron? Like, where did he come from? I'm not really understanding it. Like, I think I questioned that a lot, and I had a lot of trouble buying into who he was or why he was so evil, and like knowing his backstory, and also just knowing that he's like a spirit. Like, he's not a man. He's not of Middle-earth. He's not even of Arda. He is from like the heavens and the gods. I think that would have made the story so much more impactful to me, honestly. So like knowing it now, I'm like, that's so cool. Last few things that just happened for me when reading was finally like the awakening of elves and of men. So eventually Iluvatar is like, I'm gonna put these things into the world, these creatures. Interesting that the elves believe that like men resemble Melkor most, but because the sons of men die and leave the world, they're called the guests or the strangers, because the elves don't ever die, of course, until the end of time. The last thing that I thought was really cool was I got to learn about like the creation of the dwarves and of the orcs, and I was like, oh my god, it feels illegal to know this information. I didn't know getting to know these answers was possible. Okay, so the dwarves were actually made not by the god, not by Iluvatar, but by Aula, the guy who's like the crafts person, in the darkness of Middle-earth. For so greatly did Aula desire the coming of the children, to have learners to whom he could teach and lore in his crafts, that he got impatient and he created the dwarves instead in like the darkness of the mountains, and he hid them away. And then Iluvatar finds out, and he's like, you disobeyed me, like what are you doing? I'm the only person who is supposed to be able to like create. He takes pity on Aula, and he says that he will awaken the dwarves at the same time that he awakens the elves. We finally find out where the age-old like dwarves versus elves debate and like rivalry and hatred comes from. I guess a little bit is like literally from the very beginning, because Iluvatar says to Aula that the dwarves shall be to thee as children, and often strife shall arise between thine and mine, the children of my adoption, the dwarves, and the children of my choice, the elves. And I guess men are just like the lonely middle child. I didn't know that. I'm learning so much. You know, I think there was like one line in the film about it. It was said that they were elves once. Is that the line? There are some elves, once they are created, that fall into the hands of Melkor, who tries to lead them astray. Like once they wake up in the world and they see what's going on, lured into like Melkor's realm and his dominion, were put in prison, and by slow arts of cruelty were corrupted and enslaved. And thus did Melkor breed the hideous race of the orcs in envy and mockery of the elves. I've blabbed on enough. I just want to say I'm having a fantastic time. I'm getting so many answers. that's how the Ents came to be. That's how the Ents came to be. Second update, reading the Silmarillion. I still just can't believe that like it exists and I'm reading it. We learned that the Ents come into being because Yavanna, who is the Valar, whose power really controls, and I guess, I don't know how I want to keep describing them. I'm probably going to characterize them incorrectly, but she has an affinity for like the plants and the living things and what grows. Yavanna is worried that the children of the Iluvatar, like the elves and men, I guess she's like, I'm worried that when they come they'll have dominion over all the things of my labor to do with as they'll please, like including the trees and the plants. She's like, my heart is anxious, all my works are dear to me. Is it not enough that Morgoth or Melkor should have marred so many? Shall nothing that I have devised be free from the dominion of others? And so she makes Ents to kind of be the shepherd or the guards of the trees. Would that the trees might speak on behalf of all things that have roots and punish those that wronged them. It's so beautiful when the elves awaken, and I think like I'm in the section of Silmarillion now where it is just all elf all the time. We're just talking about the elves. We are just talking about the different branches and the different people and the different rulings and their comings and goings and travelings. It's just fascinating. To be honest, when I watch and read Lord of the Rings, the elves haven't ever really been, I think, who I've been most interested in, but I think reading the Silmarillion, I'm just like, wow, like I'm really kind of getting just so much more of a feel for who Tolkien's elves are and what they do. It's just so pretty. It's so beautiful. They've created this like Eden. I just think it's so beautiful that when they awaken in Middle-earth, they rose from their sleep. While they dwelt yet silent, their eyes beheld first of all things the stars of heaven. And so that's kind of why the elves are so like enamored and obsessed and herald the stars so much in their being, is because when they first came into being, like that's all they could see was the stars in heaven. Therefore they have ever loved the starlight. That's why they're called the Eldar. Like it translates into the people of the stars. We also have one of the elves who stays behind in Middle-earth because most of the elves, or a lot of the elves, move to go to Valinor. But we have one elf and also a Maiar named Melian. They get together and do they have children? They must. They're looking for her, and straightway a spell was laid on him, so that they stood thus while long years were measured by the wheeling stars above them, and the trees of Man Elmoth grew tall and dark before they spoke any word. So between her and him, Thingol and Melian, that's how the Sindar, or the Grey Elves, the Elves of the Twilight, come into being. We also have our first mention of Galadriel. She belongs to the Noldor, the elves who I think are most beloved of Aula, because they like craft and create and make stuff. I hope what I'm telling you is true, God, it's a lot to keep straight. And Galadriel's like lineage is like very important and influential, and like the people who she's related to play a huge role in what is to come, and especially in the downfall of Valinor, which is kind of the part I'm at now. This is what I'm saying, like Tolkien has just pulled me in and absolutely hooked me on the elves, because wow, the paragraphs describing what they do and like their world, it just sounds so, it's just so beautiful. One brand, I don't know, of elves, the Teleri, the elves, I believe they have like an island that's kind of attached, and they dwell there because they love the water above all else. There they dwelt, and if they wished, they could see the light of the trees, the two trees with the gold and silver light, and could tread the golden streets of Valmar and the crystal stairs of Tirion upon Tuna. But most of all they sailed in their swift ships on the waters of the bay of Elven home, or walked in the waves upon the shore with their hair gleaming in the light beyond the hill. Many jewels the Noldor gave them, opals and diamonds and pale crystals, which they strewed upon the shores and scattered in the pools. I'm just picturing like mermaid stuff is what I'm picturing. Light everywhere, rocks everywhere, precious stones everywhere. Then some flippin' bad stuff happens. Like I said that Melkor has been like chained up below the earth for years and years and years now, and it's now reached that time where they're like, okay, like let's bring him back up. Let's bring him back up from the bowels and see if he's changed. See if he's like worked on himself down there. They bring this man back up, and this guy just like absolutely snakes his way back into society, back to convincing people that he's changed his ways, he's mended his tune, and he's a good guy now. And he's also going to be a good guy because the elves are now awake and he wants to be friends with the elves. There are a few among the Valar who like don't want Melkor to be re-released into the world and obviously like don't trust him. But this is really, this line was so good. They don't speak up and they don't really make a big fuss when the Valar eventually do ultimately decide to just release Melkor. Tolkien writes, for those who will defend authority against rebellion must not themselves rebel. Wow. Around this time, we also have this one elf of the Noldor who is extremely powerful. Who's his father? Finrod. Nope. Finwë is his father, who is one of the like big elves, I think the leader maybe of the Noldor. So Finwë has Feanor, and Feanor has, is it 2 other brothers? Man, I thought the names in 100 Years of Solitude were rough. And Feanor has 2 brothers, 2 half-brothers, Fingolfin and Finarfin. Okay, you got that? Feanor is just like the elf. He has this like spirit that is just on fire and unquenchable. He's beautiful, he's crafty, he's so intelligent, he's strong. He decides that he is going to make the Silmarils, which are the stones loaded and infused with the light from the trees of Valinor. And what this whole thing is about is like the rise of Feanor, I guess, and like the crafting of these stones and the eventual theft of these stones. Because Feanor is like, you know what if these trees die? What if they go out? What if they stop shining? And so he produces the light, or takes the light and puts it in the rock. And the rocks become living things. They rejoiced in light and received it and gave it back in hues more marvelous than before. Feanor is like, you know what? I love these rocks. I like this rock. I like this rock that I made so much. They're precious to me. Do you see what's happening? This man is addicted to the rocks. He's like, no one else is ever gonna have these rocks. They're my rocks. I'm not sharing them. I'm not giving them to anyone. I'm gonna hide them away or wear them on my head. He began to love the Silmarils with a greedy love and grudged the sight of them all. And grudged the sight of them to all save to his father and his 7 sons. He seldom remembered now that the light within them was not his own. Uh-oh. Trouble in paradise? I think so. Around the same time that this is happening, Melkor is just out. He's walking about and he's like, psst, did you know that the Valar are actually gonna prefer the men when they wake up and they don't want the elves anymore? Oh, jeez. Morgoth, you're back at my desk.
2 more mines. Get to work. And don't forget the gold ore.
Oh no, you've discovered Zoom?
Yes. Soon the Zoom of Morgoth will be upon you all. They may have taken the Silmarils from me. They may have taken Valinor. But they cannot take Tropicalis.
Tropicalis?
Tropicalis. One of my isles in Sunshine Island. A cozy, mobile farm adventure.
That is a relief.
Being ruler of this domain is keeping me quite busy. Would you like to see?
It would be my greatest honor. Dark Lord.
Okay, so I managed 3 different islands and they all have their unique atmosphere. First, Dor Daedaloth.
Land of the Shadow of Horror? Very cute.
For example, I have my fields where I'm currently growing some daisies, and I also have my library where I can learn how to increase production.
Is this free to download?
Yes, on either iOS or Android. Okay, now welcome to Angband. We serve coffee now.
Oh, very nice. I personally like how relaxing this game looks. I guess even evil spirits need a break sometimes.
I like how this uses a lot of my strategic thinking skills, okay? There's always something going on in Sunshine Island, like limited time events, which means I must muster all of my forces to achieve the special rewards.
Is there something happening for Halloween?
Yes. The pumpkin hunt begins on October 20th and ends on November 3rd. Pumpkins will be hidden all over my 3 islands.
And if you find the pumpkins, you unlock special rewards?
Yes. They may have defeated me in centuries of open war, but nobody beats Morgoth in the pumpkin hunt.
Download Sunshine Island for free with the link in my description or the QR code on screen. You can use my exclusive voucher, Emmy25, in the settings menu to unlock your welcome gift. 250 gems and 100,000 coins. The perfect head start.
Gems?
Not those gems, buddy. Nice try. Feanor is getting addicted to his rocks. Melkor is sowing discontent among everyone, and it's just creating this firestorm that eventually leads to the downfall of Valinor and just like the poisoning of everything and of Middle-earth too, because Melkor's back. He's back building his dark dungeons. He's recruiting people to his army of darkness. And around this time, he pairs up with this spider. Like, seriously, the excitement and happiness that I feel when to learn the backstory of something that I feel like is just so beloved and that I just like obviously loved reading about and have known for so long. Like getting to know where these people came from, what these creatures were doing is so interesting. So no, the spider he pairs up with is not Shelob. It's her great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. This spider is named Ungoliant, which is so cool and is very like, it reminds me of The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. A lot of this reminds me of The Fairy Queen. In the beginning, she belonged, I guess, to the Valar. She was like their little pet spider. But she had disowned her master, desiring to be mistress of her own lust, taking all things to herself to feed her emptiness. She's just hungry. She's hangry all of the time. And Melkor promises her food, the tastiest food. He promises her the Silmarils. So Melkor teams up with Ungoliant, and their plan is to basically sneak into Valinor and destroy the trees. Teleperion? Nope, it's not happening. A little bit before that, I think Feanor like draws his blade and sheds, I think, the first drops of like elf blood against his own half-brother over the rocks. I think he spends 12 years in like exile. He comes back and he's like, yo, really sorry about that, let's never fight again. But by this point, it's like too late. Their sap poured forth as it were their blood and was spilled upon the ground, but Ungoliant sucked it up, and going then from tree to tree, she set her black beak to their wounds till they were drained, and the poison of death that was in her went into their tissues and withered them, root, branch, and leaf, and they died. Everything is just pitch black, right? Because the only light in the world, I believe, comes from these trees and the stars, I guess, because the sun and the moon haven't been created yet. And at the same time, he also stole the Silmarils, so he's gone. And now all the elves are panicking. The Valar are like, what is going on? Like, our world, our home is in darkness and decay. It's just really, truly, really good. And also now that we're getting kind of more of a narrative, rather than just like, okay, I'm just gonna tell you this myth, this legend, we're getting a lot more dialogue, which is really nice because I was kind of missing that. So people are like talking to each other, we're getting to learn what people are actually saying to one another, and I'm just loving it. We've reached the point where I am confused. Maybe not confused. Confused is not the right word. Number one, I'm still in love. Number two, I'm still confused. I'm a little bit more confused. The more I think that I read the Silmarillion, yes, things become more clear and you do get a better grasp of what is going on. You get a better command of all of the characters, the terms, the locations, the places. You start to piece together the world, like the visual map in your mind of Beleriand, for example, a lot better as you go along. And also as you go along reading the Silmarillion, things somehow get more confusing because we just add on more and more information. The amount, dear God, the amount of times I'm flipping back and forth and back and forth, the amount of times I'm flipping back to the glossary, to the index, to the appendix, to the map, to the family tree, to the terms for the different elves is ridiculous. I have never flipped. I'm still having the best time ever. I kind of forget what I updated you last, like what I last updated you on. Thoughts in general that I had about it without trying to spoil anything. And if you're reading this for the first time or if you haven't read it, I will tell you, I guess, if I'm gonna like spoil something, or I'll tell you up to the page number that I've read to, if that like helps at all. I really appreciate the structure of the Silmarillion actually, because it's not entirely chronological. We have sections that are broken down into certain thematic events, things that happened, or we have sections talking about different characters, solely the lives of different characters, but they're not chronological. So we'll have like one section talking about, for example, Doriath, which is the hidden kingdom of Thingol. We have, for example, something about Thingol's life, and then we jump forward and we see how a different character or someone in a different time is reacting to the same events, or what is happening like basically concurrently, if that makes sense. And I really like that. Yeah, I like it. I like how we're jumping around. Sometimes we go back to places. Sometimes an event happens in the past. We have like 50, 70 pages go by, and then we get that event from someone different, right? We get it from someone's POV that is a little bit different, or we learn something new about that event in the past anyway, if that makes sense. Loving it. I am not bored for a minute. I am not frustrated. Well, I'm a little frustrated because I'm like, Emma, can you just like keep up? I think it is actually pretty difficult. I think it is pretty difficult if you're reading it through for the first time. I find when I go a couple days without picking it up, which is rare, but if I go a couple days without picking it up, I'm like, oh boy. You know who's my best friend? My best friend is the index. Per chance, I was telling you that the men were on the scene. I love the different names. I love that Tolkien never gets tired of thinking up different names, different epithets for people. So the men or the humans, I'm just gonna say the humans, because like, come on. Okay, so we have the Atani. They're called the Atani, or the second people, but they're also called Hildor, the followers. Sorry, I feel like with the pronunciation, I have to really give it my all, because when I'm reading these terms, place names, people's titles, people's full names, I'm really just picturing Gandalf's voice in my head, like really giving it his all, like Sir Ian McKellen, just like giving it with his baritone. The Hildor, the followers, the afterborn, the sickly, the mortals, and the elves named them the usurpers, the strangers, the inscrutable, the self-cursed, the heavy-handed, the night-fearers, the children of the sun. Humans are now on the scene, and we learned that humans have feared the Valar rather than loved them, and have not understood the purpose of the powers, being at variance with them and at strife with the world. Humans are at strife with the world. And because humans are upon Middle-earth now, I guess the elves are waning. And the Quendi wandered in the lonely places of the great lands and the isles, and took to the moonlight and the starlight, and to the woods and caves, becoming as shadows and memories. Throughout this whole time that's happening, we have a lot of years passing the Silmarillion. All the time. What's his face? Morgoth. He has been working behind the scenes. He's been hiding in his little stronghold. He's been planning things. He's come out. He's taken one of the sons of Feanor, Medros, and he has pinned him up on the mountain. And of course, like, the elves do suffer losses. And up to this point, we haven't seen the men, I guess, be involved in this battle, in this war with Morgoth. But he has been very involved, like, with them as they awaken, and as he learns that these people, humans, exist. Like, he has a much easier time of it getting in with the men and, like, obviously corrupting them and spreading lies and treachery and trying, mostly failing, to turn the men against the elves. In this update, I'm about up to page like 175, if you're wondering. Things that I was like interested in, we have Galadriel, right? Which, like, it's just, it never gets old, frankly. I think, like, I seriously have just been like fangirl. I don't think I've ever fangirled this hard over something, like getting to know this information, like I was saying, but also every time that a character's name, place's name, obviously we had Shelob's great grandma come up, it's just like, oh my god, are you serious? Like, that I know him. We learn about Galadriel that she doesn't go to the, I guess, realm of the Noldor, who have come from Valinor, because the Noldor set up Nargothrond. Oh my god, one of my favorite words. The language that Tolkien has created in his world, in his universe, it's so satisfying to me. There are some languages to me, and I think to everyone, whose words, whose manner of speaking, whose sounds, whose structure just like naturally appeal to you. One of those languages for me is Korean. I think it's so satisfying to say the sounds in Korean, but likewise, love certain words. Certain words, when you read them, the thrill of like your brain running over that word on the page, or like saying it out loud, like Nargothrond. Oh, Nargothrond. Like, you really gotta give it, you know? It's so satisfying. Galadriel does not go to Nargothrond, okay? She goes to Doriath. She's there to meet her husband, Celeborn, who is the kinsman of Thingol. And there's great love between them. Therefore, she remained in the Hidden Kingdom. And she also learned great lore and wisdom concerning Middle-earth from Thingol's wife, partner, Melian, who is not an elf, she's not human, she is a Valar. No, she's a Maiar. On the next page, dragons. Ecstatic. Morgoth has recruited dragons, drakes, fire drakes. In this particular instance, Morgoth is trying to take down Fingolfin. Who is Fingolfin, you might ask? This is the elf that I always forget who the hell this man even is. Who are you? He is like one of the OG kings of the Noldor. He is Feanor's half-brother. Feanor, Fingolfin, Finarfin. And then what do you know it? They also have children whose names start with F. Why would you do this to me? He sends Glaurung, the first of the Uroloki, the fire drakes of the north. Have dragons now? This is incredible. And what a sick name, Glaurung. On this time period as well, like the Noldor and the Sindar. So the Noldor are the elves who come from Valinor. They saw the light of the trees. That's what their name, I think, I don't know if it translates into, but they are the elves who of the light, because they saw the light of the two trees before they were extinguished. And then the Sindar are the ones who stayed behind or who didn't make that whole journey to Valinor, right? And they didn't see the light. They're called the Grey Elves. Thingol is one of the Sindar. But at this time they become welded into one because they're meeting each other. They are, I guess, I don't know, having children with each other, so they are melding and becoming one. I thought it was interesting that the Noldor had the greater power of mind and body and were the mightier warriors and sages, and they built with stone and loved the hill slopes and open lands. But the Sindar had the fairer voices and were more skilled in music. They loved the woods and the riversides, and some of the Grey Elves still wandered far and wide without settled abode, and they sang as they went. Then we have a whole section on like Beleriand and its realms. I actually found, like, concerning maps, I'll put it here, but it has so many maps from Middle-earth, from Tolkien, from obviously his universe and stuff, and it's a really good way, because the whole time I was reading this, I was like, okay, where's the Shire? Like, where is the Shire in relation to all of this? Where is Middle-earth as, like, I know it coming to the Silmarillion in relation to Beleriand? Are these like separate land masses, like what's going on? So having like the maps in the Silmarillion and the maps in the Lord of the Rings pieced together, which like I'll just put a picture here because it's from the website, like that was just so helpful to see and to visualize and to get a clear picture of where things are. So Beleriand is basically just the land to the west, like the more westerly lands. So crucially, at this point, like through Galadriel, the Sindar gain knowledge of the Silmarils and they learn like where they are, that they exist. Melian says that this is a great matter, greater indeed than the Noldor themselves understand. For the light of Aman and the fate of Arda lie locked now in these things, the work of Feanor, who is gone. They shall not be recovered, I foretell, by any power of the Eldar, and the world shall be broken in battles that are to come ere they are wrested from Morgoth. We also learn about Gondolin. This is another like secret camp, secret city, beautiful city up in the mountains. No one knows where it is. Fingolfin's son, Turgon is the king in Gondolin. No one can go there. He's just trying to create this realm of like peace, prosperity. If someone does find their way into Gondolin, you're not leaving. Guess what? You're living up on 5th Avenue. Okay, buddy, you're not leaving Gondolin. So I'm just loving how every now and again we get answers to questions that like I had while reading The Lord of the Rings. I always remembered like being like, okay, well, I guess Galadriel is just a mind reader, like in the Fellowship when we get to Lothlorien, and she's reading people's minds, and her and Frodo, for example, are seemingly having like a whole conversation via their thoughts. Then we find out that because, I don't know if it's because, but it says the Eldar were beyond all other people skilled in tongues, and it was Felagund, who is Galadriel's brother. There's so much. It's so much. I think he's Galadriel's brother. Felagund discovered also that he could read in the minds of men such thoughts as they wished to reveal in speech, so that their words were easily interpreted. If you want to say something to someone and you can, I guess, verbalize that feeling, thought, whatever you want to say, the elves can just read that in your mind, or perhaps only Felagund can, and I guess Galadriel. I'm just like enjoying beyond belief. Yeah. What? We're finally getting some more information on Sauron, what he's doing, where he's been at. He's Morgoth's right-hand man. Sauron, Lord of Werewolves. Sauron, Lord of Werewolves. Sauron has now become a sorcerer of dreadful power, master of shadows and phantoms, foul in wisdom, cruel in strength, misshaping what he touched, twisting what he ruled. Lord of Werewolves. I'm so sorry, I did not know. Sorry. Enough of that. Is he like the alpha of the pack of his werewolves or something? He just has a bunch of werewolves doing his bidding, I guess? I don't know. I'm just like freaking out about this. This is new. This is new information. I was telling you about how we were getting a lot of the history of men and their family lines and their battles with like the orcs, for example, because as things go along, like Morgoth is kind of getting stronger and stronger, and he's prepping and he's doing the hard labor of like raising his army. So we learn about like the men and their contributions and their family lineages and stuff like that. Didn't really care too much about that, honestly. Those were probably the sections that I was just like, okay, like now, like I was just getting comfortable with the elf names and the elf lines and the different kinds of elves and their family and how they all had the same name. And then you came and dropped on me like 7 men names that all started with B and 7 other men names that all started with H. Sauron by this time has taken some towers and some passes. He's just being a big baddie with his werewolves. Sauron takes Minas Tirith and he makes it a watchtower for Morgoth. It becomes a stronghold of evil and a menace, and the fair isle of Tol Sirion became accursed, and it was called Tol in Garhoth, the Isle of Werewolves. It's like we finally have Sauron back on the page. We're kind of learning about him. I'm really appreciating learning more about him because it kind of like gives me a lot more context, a lot more information for what was for me a kind of like faceless, no personality evil man in The Lord of the Rings. I think that was one of my big things, was like I didn't like that Sauron was just this like evil, like he was just pure evil. I didn't really know anything about him, and I'm liking that like we get his backstory, his wolfy backstory. At this point as well, we have the men, certain members of like the lineages of humankind that have spread out. They're allying themselves with the elves. Who is not up for that? Thingol in Doriath is not up for that. My man Thingol just wants to be alone. He wants to be left alone with him, his wife. Galadriel's there, I guess. Celeborn's there. They're in Doriath. They're guarding their borders. They just want to be kind of like left alone. They're pretty angry at the Noldor now because they're like, you guys brought all this crap with you over here. Thanks a lot. Obviously, Turgon in Gondolin wants to be left alone. The king in Nargothrond, I think, is more willing to work with these people. Also, at this point, we learn about Hurin, who is a man, and he is actually the first man to step foot in Gondolin. I think this is the 5th big like war, or the 5th big assault now, so a lot of land is being taken. Sauron is doing his thing. There's wolves. The part that I'm at currently, so spoilers for anything up to the chapter of Beren and Luthien. I think this is the myth or the story or the song or the history that I've been not maybe the most interested in, but super interested in, because it's a storyline that mimics and is also very important for the story of Arwen and Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, and that's Beren and Luthien. So Beren is a man. He comes from one of the houses. He's the son of Barad-dur, the only man left alive in his company. I think they're exiles at this point when the orcs descend and like really just start slaughtering. He's the only one left alive, and he eventually makes it to Doriath, to Thingol's kingdom, and he sees Luthien, who is the daughter of Thingol and Melian, singing in the forest, and he falls in love with her, basically. The way that it's written about, and the way that a lot of like falling in love or meeting in the Silmarillion is written about, is like an enchantment. So a lot of it almost seems against certain people's wills, that they start to become enamored or obsessed with a certain person. And obviously when Thingol finds out about this, he's like, first of all, what are you doing in my house? Second of all, absolutely not. I will have no mortal, usurper, stranger, fear of the knights marry my daughter. Absolutely not. Also in this chapter, we end up getting a lot more about Sauron's werewolves. So they're fell beasts inhabited by dreadful spirits that he had imprisoned in their bodies. And he has so many werewolves. After all, he is the lord of werewolves. Luthien like basically begs her father not to kill Beren, and Thingol's like, okay, fine, you can marry my daughter on one condition. And Beren's like, okay, I'll do anything. And Thingol is like, okay, so I just want you to go over to Morgoth's domain. You can take a Silmaril from his crown and give it to me. Then you can marry my daughter. And everyone is like, oh snap, like that's obviously like a death mission. No one is going to be able to do that, much less a mortal man. And Beren's like, okay, well, I'll do it. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go take his crown, take some jewels from it, and bring him back. He leaves Doriath and he gets to Nargothrond, I believe. We get to our good friend Nargothrond. At this time, it's Felagund, who is king of Nargothrond, who is Galadriel's brother. Felagund is like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna help you. Like, I'm gonna help you with your task. But there are some people here that are not going to be very happy with your task because I think at that time, 2 of the sons of Feanor were visiting, and they're obviously like, our oaths are like sworn that no one else is going to possess the jewels except for us, except for the sons or the line of Feanor. So we have some trouble there. I'm just excited because I think we're finally getting to like the crux, obviously, of the Silmarillion. Like, it's called the Silmarillion because it's the journey of like retrieving the Silmarils, and I'm just really excited. I knew so little of this going into the Silmarillion that I'm just very, very excited. I am back again. I got captured by Sauron. Unfortunately, Sauron is here with his werewolves. So happy. You couldn't have told me anything that would have made me happier. Sauron's werewolves like devour basically their whole party, and unfortunately, Felagund, Galadriel's brother, king of Nargothrond, also dies. He's taken out by a werewolf, but he kills the werewolf as well. So they go down together, and that just leaves Beren like basically suffering in the prison. However, Luthien is like, well, I'm not gonna let my man just like suffer all by himself. I'm gonna go rescue him. Like, I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna leave and I'm gonna go get him. First of all, there's like a little Rapunzel moment because when Thingol finds out that like his daughter's trying to leave, he's like, well, no, like, I'm just gonna lock you in your room. It turns out that like they actually build like a room, like a treehouse, and they lock her in there because it's way up high in the tree. Yeah, it just becomes Rapunzel for a second because she put forth her arts of enchantment and caused her hair to grow to great length, and of it she wove a dark robe that wrapped her beauty like a shadow, and it was laden with the spell of sleep. Of the strands that remained she twined a rope, and she let it down from her window, and as the end swayed above the guards that sat beneath the tree, they fell into a deep slumber. So she escapes and she goes to try and find Beren. Unfortunately, she's also taken by 2 sons of Feanor, Quirfin and Celegorm, and they have this hound, the Hound of Valinor. The hound Huan? The hound like just absolutely falls in love with Luthien because she's like super nice to him. He really likes her and all that stuff. And this hound has been granted the ability to speak like 4 times, I think, in his life. They team up together. They go to the prison. They go to Sauron's tower. I think it's the tower. Is it the Isle of Werewolves that we're on? This is like crazy. This is crazy information to me, honestly. This is like you told me that Tchaikovsky had actually written more music than there actually was for the Nutcracker, and suddenly I can listen to it. Like, this is crazy to me. She shows up there. I just can't believe this is like information that I'm reading and get to tell you. And she basically challenges Sauron to a fight. I don't know what happens because I am like literally at that part now, but he sends out his werewolves. But the Hound of Valinor, Juan defeats them all. And at this point Sauron realizes that like, wait, there was like a prophecy about this hound that he would be defeated by, I think, the biggest or the best werewolf of them all. And so Sauron decides that he is gonna be that werewolf, and he turns into a werewolf. Unfortunately, Sauron, I guess, is not very good at being a werewolf because he is just getting the crap beaten out of him by this Valinor dog. He shapeshifts again. He shifted shape from wolf to serpent and from monster to his own accustomed form. But he could not, sorry, this is like new info now. He could not elude the grip of Juan without forsaking his body entirely. Oh my god. I read for so much longer than I was expecting to after updating you on Sauron's wolfy wolfness, his wolf form, but now I have so much to tell you and so many thoughts, and today is the day that we're going to be finishing the Silmarillion. I have read lots. I have lots of thoughts. Yeah, having the best time ever. Although, in terms of like the reading experience as a whole, now and like after the story of Beren and Luthien, there were definitely some chapters and some sections that came into the text that I was really not thrilled by, and I actually didn't want to be in those sections. And I think that was the first time since having started the Silmarillion that I started to feel like, okay, I am getting a little maybe not bored, but just a little fatigued. I think definitely a little fatigued. I think the Silmarillion can be very fatiguing. So much to tell you. I tried to write it down. I was last telling you that Luthien was going up against Sauron. I couldn't believe it. Just her and her dog are going to go get Sauron, and they do. Sauron gets the absolute living daylights beaten out of him, and he has to leave. He has to retreat, and Luthien gets control of the island, the prison where Beren is being kept, and she frees Beren. Sauron eventually transforms from werewolf to snake to vampire. He becomes a vampire. And then after Luthien literally, like, oh my god, it's so good. Sauron is like laying there after having been beaten by this dog, and she's like, you will be stripped of your raiment of flesh, and your ghost will be sent quaking back to Morgoth. There everlastingly thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower. What ends up happening is that Beren and Luthien, they both go with their dog to Morgoth's house, to Morgoth's abode in Angband, and this is like the first time we actually get someone going down into the depths where Morgoth is hiding, and honestly, it's like pretty easy. It's pretty easy for them to go and eventually like take a Silmaril from his crown. They just grab it. Luthien has some enchantments that she does where like everyone falls into a sleep. Beren grabs the Silmaril. Unfortunately, they don't escape because this is where the prophecy that I was saying, like regarding Juan and his defeat, comes into play, because this is actually where the biggest, baddest werewolf wakes up. It wasn't Sauron. It wasn't Sauron, it was this big other dog called Karkaroth, I believe, and he ends up like ripping off Beren's hand, which has the Silmaril, and so the dog now has the stone like inside of him, I guess, and he runs away. So Beren and Luthien and Juan at this point do escape from Morgoth, but they don't get the jewel. And they go back to Thingol, and they tell Thingol everything that happened, and Thingol is like, well, you know what, that was actually pretty impressive. Like, that was actually pretty impressive. I'm sorry I doubted you. I guess you can marry my daughter anyway. However, Beren doesn't think that his quest has been fulfilled, and so he goes and finds the dog. And unfortunately, this is where Juan dies, and this is also where Beren dies. I don't think I've ever said it, but something that I've just been like, wow, like this, like Tolkien, this is like Tolkien's like thing I feel like he does when he can't find a way out of something, or maybe he's just doing it on purpose, obviously. But the eagles who obviously appear at the end of the Lord of the Rings to help Frodo and Sam, they are so much in the Silmarillion, and I haven't ever said this yet, but they appear, I think they've appeared like thrice now, and they always help obviously the elves or the men when something is going amiss or astray, or they come in at the last moment when like, where were you before, and they help, for example, Beren and Luthien escape. Like, I'm gonna go get my coffee, but yeah, the eagles are just doing so much to help. Like, I don't know where anyone would be without the eagles. Everything would be long over. So I think this was actually one of my favorite sections, because to wrap things up at the end, like obviously Beren dies, and then Luthien dies kind of out of grief. She kind of loses the will to live, but she's taken to the halls of Mandos, where Manwë has pity on her, and he gives her a choice where she can either dwell with the Valar in Valimar, or she can awaken back into Middle-earth with Beren, but this time they'll both be mortal, and they will both like have a mortal span of life, and then they'll die. And she obviously chooses to go with Beren back to Middle-earth, and they kind of disappear out of everyone's lives and go live in the forest and have some kids and have a great time. So I think the sections with Beren and Luthien so far have felt the most different, the most fairy tale like in the Silmarillion, and they've been some of my favorites because we just have like the whole Rapunzel myth, we have this forbidden love going on, we have this like medieval quest of a knight. It really feels like a lot of this section reminds me of some sections of The Fairy Queen, again by Edmund Spenser, and then we also have the whole Sauron werewolf saga. It's probably my favorite thing, and the dog. I love the sections with the dog. This is also this, I don't know, the whole Beren and Luthien, I think this is probably peak Silmarillion for me, because we get to go into Morgoth's house. We get a lot. It's a lot going on. It's fast-paced. It's fun. I think with the Silmarils, like now it's really all coming to fruition, because after Beren and Luthien get sent back into the world, we have like the fifth battle raged by Morgoth, because at this point Thingol does have possession of the Silmarillion after it was taken out of the belly of the werewolf, and he has it down there in Doriath, and he's becoming quite possessive of it. Morgoth comes out, he wages war, and we get a lot of Balrogs. Again, we get Gothmog. Gothmog might take the cake for my favorite Tolkien character name, I think ever, Gothmog. But Gothmog, the Balrog, slays Fingon? Oh my god, it is Fingon! I think we're finally doing it. So it feels like these were the sections right after the fifth battle where I started to get really fatigued, because these are the sections, which has another published work out, I believe. I don't know how long it is, but these are about the children of Hurin, who was the first man who was in Gondolin. He was really respected by the king, and now we get the story of his children, mostly of his child Turin, who does a lot. I found myself much less interested in like Turin's story, even though Glaurung does make a reappearance. Okay, what is this? 250 in here, and it really feels like I'm on page 2500. Something I thought was interesting is that we do have Melian at this point giving Lembas to this guy named... It's fun because we have the first mention of Lembas, and at this point I realized that I was like, what? I kind of wanted to know more about the elves in terms of their clothing culture and what they've been eating, because like honestly I think no mention really of food has been made. Like, yes, there was feasting in Valinor, and I think we got a little bit of that, but since they have come into Middle-earth, we haven't really heard what the style is, what they're eating. I'm very much interested in those aspects of history and of the elves being, but anyway, we do get a little bit of information on this. She gave him Sorlembus, the way bread of the elves, wrapped in leaves of silver, and the threads that bound it were sealed at the knots with the seal of the queen, a wafer of white wax shaped as a single flower of Telperion. I didn't know that when we see the Lembas and it has the little I guess star on it, it is a symbol of the tree in Valinor, Telperion. That's so nice. According to the customs of the Eldalie, the keeping and giving of Lembas belonged to the queen alone. In nothing did Melian show greater favour to Turin than in this gift, for the Eldar had never before allowed men to use this way bread, and seldom did so again. That's fun. The other thing I thought was really interesting was that we do get another piece of the puzzle in the dwarves versus elves feud. I guess we get another piece because in this section we meet a dwarf named Mim, and he lets us know that before the dwarves of Nogrod and Belagast, so I think two different lines of dwarves, came west over the mountains, the elves of Beleriand knew not what these others were, and they hunted them and slew them. So I guess like the eldest line of the dwarves to come west, when they first appeared, the elves were like, what the heck is that? And they hunted them like animals and straight up just murdered them. So that would make sense why the dwarves are pretty angry at the elves. Around like the 260 page mark, like things are really just decaying. The three realms, I guess, of Doriath, Nargothrond, and Gondolin, the realms of the elves, are really fading and coming into decay. Everyone is given an ear out to Morgoth. People are betraying other people. Elves are betraying elves. Men are betraying men. Everything's just kind of hitting the wall, and Morgoth's power is, I guess, at its height. I don't know, and that's maybe not really the point, but I think when I'm reading the Silmarillion, there is like an emotional distance because of the kind of text that it is, where I don't feel a strong emotional sadness or anything like that when we have characters, when we have kings who are dying, when we have people who are being torn asunder, when we have realms, like beautiful, glorious realms like Gondolin fall. I don't really feel an emotional response, and so I think that's something compared to the Lord of the Rings that I'm a little bit missing, because the Silmarillion is very much written like a textbook, and it's hard to feel like emotions for your textbook, if that makes sense. So I'm not really expecting that kind of reader response when I'm going through this text, but it is just something that I'm like, oh, okay, it's just like a fact being stated, it's just numbers being stated. I'm not really getting a full narrative picture and response from this text, if that makes sense. Anyway, all that being said is that Doriath falls, and it does so because of the Silmarils, of course, because Thingol has been down in his basement, down in his caves, just staring at the rocks. He can't get enough of them, and at this point some dwarves have come into Doriath, and Thingol wants to work with them and put the jewels into a crown, a necklace. I think it might be as a necklace, but the necklace was originally made by the dwarves. Like, it's an old artifact that Thingol wants to reanimate with the jewels. This does not go well. I was just so shocked, and I think that's part of like the reason why I'm not having as much of like a, oh my goodness, like going through all the waves of like readership that I normally would be with a text like The Lord of the Rings, because Tolkien just like sometimes lets us know in 1 or 2 sentences, seemingly out of nowhere, these huge things that happen, or these huge deaths that happen. Necklace is wrought. It's called the Nauglarim or something like that. No, sorry, the Nauglamir. The lust of the dwarves was kindled to rage by the words of the king, because the dwarves want the necklace now that they see the jewel in it, and Thingol's like, no. The dwarves rose up about him and laid hands on him and slew him as he stood. So died Thingol, and with his last sight he gazed upon the Silmaril. So that's it. My mouth like popped open, because I'm like, oh my goodness, Thingol has been a central character in everything. He's been maybe not the elf who's been on page the most, but he's really, really up there, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's done. I talked too much, my mic died, the camera died, yeah. I only want to just like tell you every single thing that happens. I actually had a little bit of an idea if, I don't know if anyone's interested, but I thought it'd be so fun to do a video literally explaining and going over and summarizing every single thing that happens in the Silmarillion. I think that'd be so fun, and also just a really good resource for myself, because holy moly, I feel like I need something like that. And if I made it myself, that would let me get a lot more immersed into it. I don't know, I'm just thinking of the possibilities. So there's just another, like, so many families to keep track of, Dior is the son of Luthien and Beren. Dior has a daughter with Nimloth, who is an elf, and their daughter is named Elwing, which really prettily means spray of stars or something, because she was born at night, like by a waterfall, which was reflecting the stars. Gorgeous, gorgeous. I wish my name had such meaning. This is where like the line really starts to matter and be like very relevant to the things that happen in Lord of the Rings. I'm trying to tell you. I'm losing it at this point. I'm losing it. It's too much information has been stuffed into my brain in the past 3 weeks. It's too much. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where I'm storing this. I don't know how my neurons and synapses are making space for this. We're full up. We're full up. Tolkien, please. No more. No more names. No more new characters. Elwing, right? At the same time, in Gondolin, we have the union of Tuor, who's the son of Turin, and Tuor, this is like the second union of elves and humans, because he marries Idril, who is the daughter of the king. And together, they have a son named Erendil, who's called half-elven. So now we have half-elf, half-human, another half-elf, half-human, and they get together. They have 2. Okay, I literally wrote this down. Basically, I had to tell you all this so we could get to Elrond. We finally have Elrond on the page. We finally have another one that we know. We know him. Elrond actually has a brother named Elros, and this is so important. So this is the time where like the battle for the Silmarils just gets so cutthroat. We have the 3rd most like grievous curse of elves slaying elves, because Dior, who has the Nauglamir, gets slain by the sons of Feanor, who are still out here like trying, like, here's the thing, they literally do nothing when Morgoth has the jewel, because I guess they kind of think they can't stand against him. But then when one other elf has a jewel, they're like, we're going all out, this person is dead, and so they slay Dior. But Dior's daughter Elwing makes off with the jewel. So the sons of Feanor don't get it. This is the thing I don't understand, because at this point, like the oath that was sworn by the sons of Feanor back in Valinor, it's wearing like thin on the people who have taken the oath. For example, a couple sons of Feanor are really getting weary of it, and I'm just like, why? I guess they feel, I don't really understand like the magic there or whatever is holding them to their oath, because I'm just like, stop, like you don't want to be doing this. Cut it out, I guess. And I know that's not really maybe in line with the rules of the world and the story, but I'm just like, I don't really know how you're so beholden to this oath that you've taken to recover the jewels. Like, you're immortal, like go have a good time. What are you doing? Elrond, so cool. When I watch the films again and I see Elrond come on screen, I just have so much more knowledge about him, and it makes everything that he's saying and doing make so much more sense and have so much more deep meaning. And it's so like, wow, because Elrond and his brother Elros get taken by the sons of Feanor as like captives, and they're being held at ransom for the jewels. And so like Elrond spends his boyhood in captivity, basically being held as ransom so that the people holding him captive will get the jewels back. And so I feel like when we see him on screen in Fellowship, he's just like, oh my gosh, guys, like, again, you've brought me this piece of jewelry that everyone is fighting about. I've seen this before. Like, this is so old. Can we stop going insane for necklaces and rings? Two half-elf, half-human people, Arendil and is it Elwang still? They go to Valinor because they're like, you know what? Like, Morgoth is just wrecking everything. I'm gonna go ask the Valar to help us. And I was like, when we get over there, I'm like, oh my god, wait, there's still elves over there. I completely forgot about the elves that decided to stay in the west when everyone went east. And I'm like, wow, like this whole time we've had like pages of trauma, bloodshed, war, tragedy, and then we get to the west and there's so many elves and so many places over there. Like the whole oh, who is it? A bunch of elves living on like one island close to Valinor, and then we have a bunch of elves in Valinor, and like things are great. Like prosperity is prosperitying, and everyone is so happy. And I'm like, you guys have been sitting over here doing nothing while Morgoth is over there doing it all. The Valar eventually listened to Arendil, and they're like, okay, we're gonna come help you. At this point, what was so cool, so cool, is that they give to Arendil and Elwing, because they're half-elf, half-human, the chance to choose to belong completely to one of the kindred, to one of the two kindreds. You can either be completely on the side of humans, you become human yourself, and you align your fate with the humans, or you align your fate with the elves. So cool, so cool. And so Arendil is like, okay, well, I'm gonna do whatever my wife chooses, and his wife ultimately chooses to be an elf forever. Choice is also given to their sons, Elrond and Elros, and they make different decisions, because obviously Elrond chooses to be a full elf and cast his lot in with the elves, but his brother chooses to be a man forever and cast his lot in with the mortals. I think that must be so sad, and like we don't really obviously get a lot of the inner thought of Elrond at all. Like we don't ever hear him speak, we don't really see what he thinks too much about these things, but I think that's part of the reason why he's so strict and so sad when we see him in the Fellowship, because he sees himself like losing his daughter to the same thing that took his brother, like aligning himself and aligning herself with a mortal life. And so I think like it makes so much more sense, because throughout the whole movie I'm like, oh my god, dude, like let your daughter be happy, let her make the choice that she wants. But part of the reason why he's so sad is because he's already been through that. He's already lost his brother that way. He's already had to say goodbye to his brother that way. Yeah, it's just all making sense. It's all making sense, and it's so good. Something super weird. Arendil eventually keeps the jewel, the Silmaril, because he's brought it with him to Valinor, and Arendil becomes a star, like in the sky. He has this vessel filled with a wavering flame, and he becomes a mariner who sits at the helm, glistening with dust of elven gems. Far he journeyed in that ship, like he's going in the sky. Okay, it gets a little weird. He's going into the sky, even into the starless voids, like beyond Arda, I'm imagining. Most often he was seen at morning or at evening, glimmering in sunrise or sunset, and he came back to Valinor from voyages beyond the confines of the world. This man is... what? And then even more crazy, his wife Elwing, because she became a bird to basically like follow him into Valinor in the first place, she learns the language of birds, and she gets to become a bird at will and like fly around. Like just crazy. Once the Valar decide that they're gonna go help Middle-earth, as well as like a big host of elves who have been living in the West, like we have the fall of Morgoth in 2 pages, basically. Like things like that happen so quickly, and so it's just a little bit anticlimactic, even though we're not in a proper novel, to just like have the fall of Morgoth just basically in like 50 sentences maybe. That was just a little bit of a letdown for me, because I'm like, okay, like the Valar show up and they just crush Morgoth and they lock him away in the voids outside of the world, so he can never come back into the world. So he's not dead or anything like that. I guess he can't really die. He's just locked in the black hole, in the darkness of the universe, and the jewels are lost forever. That is basically the end of the Silmarillion, and then we have the Akalabeth, which is the last book at the end, the last book of the Bible, if you will. I have a lot to say about this section. I'm almost done, but basically because the men have helped the Valar and the elves against Morgoth, the Valar create Numenor, which is an island out west close to Valinor. Getting super greedy again because not only are they given their own home, they're blessed with super long life, like hundreds of years. Obviously Aragorn is one of the Dunedain, or the Numenorians. So when we see him in Fellowship, I think he's around like 80 something. That's not even enough for them. And they desire the immortality and the power, the immortality of the elves, the power of the Valar, and so they rebel. I have my glasses on. I mean, serious business. We are gonna finish the Silmarillion right now. I have about less than 30 pages left. I'm actually really sad. I feel like I've run a marathon. I really feel like I've run a marathon. So like I am happy to be almost done this because I'm like tired. This was actually, yeah, probably the most fatiguing reading experience in terms of the amount of information that you have to make sense of, or that you are expected to keep together, or at least I've expected myself to keep together, because of course the Silmarillion can be used as a really, really good source to just come in and out of if you're reading The Lord of the Rings and you want more information about something, or you want to know about a specific piece of history that happened. But reading it front to back over the span of a few weeks has been pretty crazy, trying to keep it all together, so I am looking forward to giving my brain a little break from it. Like I was telling you in the last update a few minutes ago, I was learning about the fall of Numenor. So this is where the lines of men, the race of men who have been given long life, split apart, because you have some who remain faithful to the Valar and to the elves, and you also have some who start to worship Morgoth. God damn it. Did we not learn Morgoth was just banished? Except they didn't banish Sauron. They did not banish the Lord of Werewolves, and he is having his revenge. I don't know why, like, we didn't get any detail about Sauron or what he was doing. Did he flee like a coward when Morgoth was taken? Where was he in the battle? Why were the elves, why were the elves not like, hey, like, you got one, but where's the other one? Then Sauron starts to go more eastward, and we get the first mention of, now I can't even remember things from the original three. Fantastic. Mordor, oh my god. And we get the building of Barad-dur, his tower. So he really starts to gain power, and because, like I was saying, the Numenorians, a branch of them, have become quite greedy, they start to listen to Sauron, and they want him, first of all, under their dominion when they're at the height of their power, but eventually, when Sauron comes to Numenor, he gets invited. He basically does the exact same thing that Morgoth did, turns them against the elves, against the Valar, and it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. It's like, did no one write this down? What happened in the centuries that just happened? Did no one learn from this? Did no one create history textbooks? How are we educating our people? I think that's something that I missed. Is there an elf school? Is there a school for humans? Are we doing anything about education and history and like learning that we should not trust dark lords who make jewelry? God damn it. He gets the men making sacrifices to Morgoth. He's created a cult. Like, this is where we first get the mention of Isildur and his line. He's on the line of Elros, which is Elrond's brother. And Elrond's brother was one, I guess, the king, right, of Numenor, probably like the best king, the most well-known king. And his line, part of his line, descends through, is it Erendil? And Erendil's son, Isildur, who obviously we know a lot about, and he obviously makes the same mistakes, even though back then he was being great, he was rebelling against the people who were aligning themselves with Sauron, and he actually steals part of the tree of, for the last time, ladies and gentlemen, the index, Nimloth. He takes the tree and he takes one of the fruits of the tree to bring back, and eventually that's going to be the tree. That's going to be the seed that plants the tree in Gondor, which is so cool, man. So this is so cool. So back then, we really appreciate Isildur, even though, of course, we know he mucks it up in future, because they all do until someone comes who's, I guess, strong enough. My man Aragorn. I am just going to sit here and finish this. This is just crazy to me. Like, Sauron has, I don't know what form he's taken. I don't know why. It's just so frustrating that this has been allowed to happen. It's becoming Atlantis really quickly. A mighty wind and a tumult of the earth, and the sky reeled, and the hills slid, and Numenor went down into the sea, with all its children and its wives and its maidens and its ladies proud, and all its gardens and its halls and its towers, its tombs and its riches, and its jewels and its webs, and its things painted and carven, and its laughter and its mirth and its music, its wisdom and its lore, they vanished forever. Interesting, Numenor is even called Adelante in the Eldarin tongue, Wow. Okay, so I'm on the very last section, which is very short, and that's of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. Why am I crying? I have finished the Silmarillion. I started crying, wow. After the downfall of Numenor, you get the last section which I started, which was like of the Rings of Power and of the Third Age eventually. So you get basically at breakneck speed everything that happens right before the Fellowship of the Ring starts. Like we are just like listing everything, every single thing that happens. And you get obviously like the forging of the One Ring and of the rest of the rings that Sauron oversees. Their creation, and then you get everything leading up to Fellowship when Frodo eventually is given the One Ring. Insane, just insane. I think just reading the Silmarillion really, truly, first of all, highly recommend it because of the fact that it gives you so much information, which translates into such a deeper breadth of meaning, such a deeper understanding of everything that is past. The context is so incredibly valuable because it just gives the story, the 3 novels that come and the film, so much more power and oomph and just wow. Just I'm like literally just speechless. I was about to be super angry at the elves for letting him back into their lives like the men did in Numenor, but to be fair to the elves, at this point Sauron disguises himself as someone completely different because he knows that the elves are harder to fool, and so he disguises himself as Anatar or something. I don't know why the elves like don't question who this guy is, but whatever. He uses the exact same tactics, being like, hey, don't you want more power? Don't you want more realms of Middle Earth under your control? Aren't you jealous of the people in the West? Elrond is not one of the elves that gives into this, and he's like, I don't know who this guy is, but he is a liar. 3 rings that are given to the elves, what are they called? Narya, Nenya, and Vilya, the rings of fire, of water, and of air, which is really cool because when you have these, because at this time the elves are like very much waning and the world is giving way to the rise of men, but if you have one of the 3 rings, whoever had them in their keeping could ward off the decays of time and postpone the weariness of the world. So I think Elrond has one, Galadriel has one, and we don't know who has the 3rd one. This was probably one of my favorite sections because it's so pertinent and so immediately relevant to when you pick up the Fellowship, which I just want to do now that I finish this. I just want to go and pick up the Fellowship because you have everything about the Ringwraiths, everything about Rivendell, everything about Aragorn's line, everything about the last alliance between elves and men. You understand how Sauron comes back after the fall of Numenor, because when Numenor is pulled down into the ocean, Sauron also gets pulled down into the ocean. You get about like 1 page about the event of even the Lord of the Rings, and Frodo is mentioned, and obviously Gandalf is there. You learn about Gandalf and the other Istari, who are wizards who are brought from the west into Middle-earth to basically guard against Sauron and his evils. If you don't want to read the whole Silmarillion, or okay, here's the thing. If you are thinking of starting, like, reading The Lord of the Rings and you do not want to read the Silmarillion beforehand, I don't know if I would even want to read the Silmarillion beforehand, because I think if you start with this, you're going to get very fatigued, very bored. But if you want to read just a little bit of something to give you just like a touch more detail and meaning and context, I would just read the last chapter in here. I would just read Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age at the back of the Silmarillion, which is like about 20 pages. It gives you so much information, so much context, and so many tidbits that when you like see them pop up in The Lord of the Rings, it's like, wow, I know where that came from, I know who made that, I know the history of that object or that symbol or that flower or that ring or that palantir, where did that come from, that Pippin discovers in Orthanc. Man, every book, honestly, every tome that we've read for Game of Tomes this year, this is now our 3rd one, because I read this for the Game of Tomes book club that I host with my best friend Karen Lynn. At the end of every single book, it's just like a feeling of, because you've been in the book so long, it's a feeling of, oh my god, the journey's over, and I think I'm having that the most in this one. The Magic Mountain brought me to tears. I lost it. East of Eden was probably my least favorite so far in the book club, but I still really felt it at the end of the book, and now that I'm done the Silmarillion, I am like, I'm physically fatigued. Like, I'm so fatigued from reading this that I'm just like emotionally ready to combust, and just to finish it with like, you have this whole epic story and this repeated motif of greed and going after jewels, and looking at it in a very eco-critical context is so relevant and apparent and important. And then you get to the end where it like goes over the events of the Lord of the Rings, which again play into the exact same things that you've just spent this whole time learning about and like studying, almost like taking this whole course. I'm just so happy I read this, and yeah, I guess my dad was really onto something for all those years. He was really onto something. There's a 50-50 chance that I'm just gonna end the Game of Tomes reading vlogs by crying at you. I don't know, I think I'm just like feeling homesick or something actually right now. Now that I'm done the Silmarillion, yeah, I said at the start of the video that like this has been like an artifact and like a thing in my like basement that I would see all the time as a kid. Important to me, and just like thinking about like movie nights with my parents and my brother at home when I was a kid, and like obviously now I'm like older and not at home anymore. I don't know why this is hitting me so hard right now. It feels like a piece of home a little bit, I think, and I'm just really grateful that I got to read it. It's no longer this mystified object to me. It's something so much better, and I really enjoyed my time with it immensely. Oh man, why does this happen to me every time with the book club books, man? What is going on? You're crying at a textbook. You're crying at a textbook. What does it come to? I was gonna give you my closing thoughts, but I don't think I can't anymore. This was just wonderful. This was a great reading experience. This was a good time. I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it all the way to the end, can you leave me like a little, what do I want you to leave me? If there's like a ship, like a sailboat or a wave emoji, maybe leave that if you made it all the way, because we went on a journey together, holy moly. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Carolyn and all of you guys who read it along with us in the book club. This was wonderful. Thank you to Sunshine Island for sponsoring this video. I've honestly been playing that as like a very nice reprieve to doing something so, like, I think taxing on the brain as reading the Silmarillion and trying to keep everything straight. So that's been really fun. Again, the link is in the description if you guys want to download that app. You can use my code or the voucher, the QR code on screen, to get an exclusive offer. So I'm so done. I need to stop crying on the internet. Ciao.